So I'm back with more Stairway to Heaven, and today we're going to go online and play through the solos from the most popular Stairway to Heaven tabs. How do I define most popular? Well, I googled Stairway to Heaven tab, and I looked at every link on the front page and pulled all the unique versions of the tab. That sounds like a lot, but in reality, most tabs are just copies of the same one from Ultimate Guitar, so at the end of the day, I only really have like 7 tabs to review, but I'm going to play them all, and I'm going to give scores based on how good I think they are. It's been a while since I've talked Stairway, and for those of you who haven't been following my channel, the context of this video is that last year I spent the whole summer studying and breaking down every note of Stairway to Heaven with the goal of creating the most accurate Guitar Pro tab of the entire song. That includes all instruments, drums, bass, keyboards, and recorders, which has never been done before. I listened to multiple versions of the song, including vinyl rips, digital remasters, and even isolated tracks to make sure that every single note, measure by measure, was tabbed accurately. My reason for creating the Stairway tab was simply to honor the most legendary song ever written. I felt that it was necessary to have a complete and accurate record of the song, and by chance, I happened to pick up this project and finish it in time for the 50th anniversary in November 2021. This gave me a chance to create my own instrumental cover of the song, which I'm also very proud of. But additionally, the exercise gave me some insight on the composition of the song that I really want to share. So since then, I've been going down and breaking down the whole process section by section, starting with the guitars. I've done the acoustic intro, the 12-string rhythms, and I've spent quite a bit of time with the guitar solo, naturally, since it's the most critically analyzed piece of the song. I've picked apart every note of my tab, along with my own performance of the solo, breaking down my logic as to why I play the song the way that I do. Because of the considerable amount of time I spent creating and validating my tab, I genuinely believe it is 100% accurate to the original studio performance, at least when we're talking about the guitar solo. A lot of online tabs are projects by amateurs who are tabbing for fun, or even if they're done by professionals, they're probably only spending a couple of days or even just hours putting the notes down by ear and by memory, and they're not going back through to listen measure by measure, note by note, ensuring the accuracy of their work. Why I think this matters is that Stairway is one of the greatest songs of all time and also an entry-level song. It draws a lot of beginners who don't have trained ears and are going to look at these tabs and use them as the gospel. They don't have the ability to tell whether or not their playing is actually correct as long as it sounds close enough, and these people may end up going on for the rest of their life thinking they're playing Stairway 100% spot on to the recording. I know this because I was one of these people, and while I was working on this project, I was shocked to find out, 10 plus years later, how many things I was actually doing incorrectly. That's the problem I really want to highlight today. So I thought it would be fun to go online and actually look at all of these tabs and play through them just to see how accurate they are, where each tab gets it right, and where things go really bad. So with this video, I want you to be able to see the tab and also me playing through it in real time. So you're gonna have this side view compromise where I'm gonna try and show 1 or 2 lines at a time as I play through them. I'm gonna stop at each line and scroll down as we get to a new section. And also, whenever I find something that's either a mistake or something that's tabbed strangely, I'm gonna stop and analyze them. I'm gonna use my mouse to actually help highlight a lot of these issues whenever I see them. So the first website we're going to go to is Songster. The reason I chose this tab is because it's similar to Guitar Pro, so it's very close to what I've already demonstrated. Songster is not as powerful as the software because it's online, so there's going to be some limitations, and I'm going to try and point those out. But aside from that, this tab is pretty good. You can see right here we're looking at the acoustic guitar intro, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to the lead guitar. And here you go. So this is the guitar solo, 98 BPM, and I'm just gonna start playing. So let's start with the first line. We've got the bend on 7. The first thing I see here is that there is the vibrato on the 8, but there's no vibrato on the bend. This is probably a Songster limitation. They probably cannot put the vibrato on the bend. Interestingly enough, I see that they are just asking to pull everything off, which is fine. It's a way to do it. It's not how I chose to do it. And if you look at my version of the tab and my breakdown of my own tab's guitar solo, I've explained why. But from here on, I'm just going to stick to the accuracy of the notes. Most importantly, the note itself, but also the position in which it's played, which is going to be a big deal. But back to the first line, it looks pretty good to me. Next. So, I played the solo the way that I play it by muscle memory. That's probably going to happen a lot, but as I do that, I'm going to point it out. These notes are tabbed correctly and they're in the right position, but something is missing. You have this bend. This is the part that's slightly awkward. It's asking you to play this A on 5 and then follow it up with the A on 10, which is actually correct. This is the right way to play Stairway to Heaven, and a lot of tabs will not tab this particular section correctly. What this section is missing is a slide up to 10. It's very awkward to play because of the distance between these two notes. What it should have tabbed instead is this. So a slide up to 10 after this 5, which is the correct way. So for the rest of the section, and I see this tabber really likes hammer-ons and pull-offs. They're putting it pretty much on any note that can be hammer-on or pull-off, which again I think is a little bit excessive. So far all the notes are correct. We're just missing a little bit of legato here. Scroll down a little bit. On to the next line. That is great. This is exactly how I would play it. That is also great, exactly how I would play it. Now let's see what we have here. This is where things start to break down. First of all, I do slide after this note here, right? But I slide up to 12. And I play in this position. The reason I do that is because this next line here is a bend on 15. If you play it my way, you're naturally already in the correct position. Now let's look at this tab instead. They've played this. First thing is, actually I played it incorrectly before. I played a slide down to 7. I was going to comment on how slide down to 7 is awkward, but they're not actually doing that. They're playing the 7 and sliding out, which is absolutely not correct. I think the tabber intends for this to be a slide up to 7. Because that is very obviously what Jimmy Page is playing. Again, I do the slide from 8 to 12. But I do see this section played this way in a lot of tabs. Again, the notes are correct. I disagree with the position because at the end of this tab, I have to jump from this 8 position all the way up to 13. And here is the next mistake. As sirens ring in the background, I'm just going to keep going. There needs to be another note here. There's 2 13s. And then the bend. Aside from that, I do think everything is correct. This note here is often wrong. It's often tabbed as a 12, but here this tab has it right. So let's see what we've got so far. I pretty much agree with everything except we're missing the legato slide here. I think that this is spot on, this is spot on, this is tabbed awkwardly. I think that's supposed to be a slide up, and I think that this is in the wrong position, and I'm missing a 13 right here. So aside from that, going into this repetitive section, everything's not bad. So far, I would actually think that this tab is pretty good. So let's get into the repetitive section. Now, did I actually have to play all that? Of course not. Nobody's ever really tabbed this section incorrectly. Not that I know of, although, you might be surprised. I do really like how the last note here has been tabbed. In particular, that they've tabbed the release. Because that is what you hear on the record. Another thing I like is the timing here. This 13 is tabbed as a 16th note. A lot of times it's incorrectly tabbed as an 8th note, which gives you a slight pause going into the bend, when in reality the bend is instantaneous. The 16th note is correct. but I just love that release that they've tabbed on this bend. So let's go on. So I do like this as well. I like exactly how this has been tabbed, especially this hold here. Now let's see this next part. So two things. Again, I like all of these notes. I think they're correct. They're in the right position. These notes need to be held together, so they should be tied, or they should have ghost notes in parentheses to show that all three of these notes are being played at the same time, the way that I did it. Again, you'll see me as I go through this tab default through my muscle memory to the way that I like to play it, but I do stop to point out how the tab has it written. So I'm sorry if that's throwing you off, but it's just hard to break muscle memory. This last note is very interesting to me because this is a bend with a vibrato, which is true. This bend has a very strong vibrato on it. But if we go to the beginning, it's missing that vibrato on this note. So I would actually ding points for this because this is the most prominent note of the song. It's the very first note. It's very well known, and it's very obvious that there is a strong vibrato on this note. So I don't know why it's missing anymore, now that I've been given the revelation that this bend here does have a vibrato. At the same time, I do appreciate that there's no vibrato on this bend. On my cover of the solo, I put a really hard vibrato here, but it's actually not present on the original recording. So that is the level of scrutiny that I'm actually going into. These are the types of details I'm breaking down. It's not just the notes and where they're played, but the actual intricacies of how the notes should be tabbed out, given the capabilities of the software. And this software is seemingly very capable of producing an accurate tab. All right, so on to the next measure. So we're gonna bend up from 14, 1.5. I appreciate this, the staccatos, as well as the pause here, which could also be tabbed as a staccato, right? This last piece is written, it's not how I like to play it because it's not what I hear. What I hear is a bend up from 12. So. So I do think that the legato is inappropriate here, but let's just move on. This, I think, is incredibly awkward. You saw me struggle to go through it, right? You have a bend up from 10, which I think is correct. And it's just playing all the notes on the same string, which makes absolutely no sense to me. It's very difficult, right? Unless you're playing the bend maybe like this. But there's a much better way to play this. Now, I understand why this is tabbed like this. A lot of people like to play this final section because we're most comfortable playing pentatonics with our index and our ring finger, right? And a lot of people don't even use their pinky at all like I did. They just stretch. And, I use my pinky again. It's a default habit. This is a bad habit, and it infects a lot of tabs because people tab the way that they play it. And again, these bad habits end up propagating into the tab, which is another thing that I want to correct. If your mechanics aren't up to the point where you can play something efficiently, there's two things you can do. You can stick with the bad mechanics and then just keep hammering it on until you can play it. Or you can improve your mechanics and learn to play things properly. How I like to do this section is probably what most beginners would consider to be a very awkward way, but I find it very efficient. So I'm going to bend up with my middle finger. And I do these pentatonics, alternating my middle and my pinky. Which, again, it's going to be awkward at first, but it requires the least motion. In fact, it is much more awkward to do this, where you have to shift your hand down. There's no legato, right? There's no slides being introduced because Jimmy Page does not play any slides, so it's not justified to do something like. So the only way that makes logical sense is to do this. You just have to get through the initial awkwardness of having to strengthen your middle finger and your pinky. But anyway, we're pretty much at the end of the tab. I've never seen this ending tabbed incorrectly, so let's go through with it. And there you go. This is the Songster tab that you can find online. It's the second option, I believe. Of course, the first one's Ultimate Guitar. So let me give my overall thoughts on this tab. I'm going to point out each thing that I think is inaccurate or misleading, and to give a score, as I scored my own tab, I'm pretty much going to subtract a point for each major mistake. So this is missing the vibrato, so that's going to be 1 point. I'm going to let the hammer-ons and pull-off slides. I do think that this tab overdoes it, but it doesn't affect like the overall quality of the tab. Here, this looks good, but again, this is awkward. It needs a legato slide from 8 up to 10. The way that I would tab this is with a mini 8 that slides up to 10, or maybe the 8 in parentheses, or you can just do a slide up to 10, but I would play it as a legato slide, right? So that's another point. So this is all good. This was all good. The position of this is very awkward. This slide out is actually really confusing, right? So again, it's supposed to slide up to the 7, but the notes are correct. We'll see down the road that some other tabs start to play some really wild things here. But what happens is you end up having to do a very awkward jump from 8 to 15, so that's another point. We're missing a note here. Blatant miss of a note. This should be another 13. It's played twice. And I believe that the rest of this looks good. Again, I gave huge props to this note. And this section I thought was great. These notes should be tied together. I do think that this is very prominent. It's very obvious and noticeable. So there should be a tie there, so that's another point. And everything here is looking okay. I think that this is clearly a bend from 12 to 14, not a hammer-on, so that's another point. And then finally, this is very awkward. Thankfully, the notes are all correct, so instead of subtracting more than 1 point for like each one of these very awkward notes, I'm just going to take off 1 point for this entire section. I'll be a little bit forgiving here. And aside from that, I mean, 8 points off, that's a 92. It's a passing grade in the American school system. So there we go, Songster. This is tab number 1. Overall, I think it's a pretty good tab. It's not perfect. The mistakes are very minor. So this is a pretty good resource, actually. I would recommend this as a solid tab for you to try and learn the solo on. Next up, we got Ultimate Guitar. So we're going to go with version 1. This is the most famous tab, probably the most famous Stairway to Heaven tab. And it's a solid starter. I think pretty much everybody uses this as their initial point. It's the first thing you're going to see. You know, it's got the most ratings, 22 million views, right? So let's take a look at how this solo goes. So let me zoom in a little. I apologize in advance if there's any point where I'm playing the tab and it's not displayed on my screen. Obviously, I'm looking at the tab, whereas my screen capture is off to the side. So I'm going to try my best to only have 2 lines at a time and to remember to scroll down as I go from each line so that you can still see what's going on. So unlike Songster, this is an ASCII tab. I'm going to give a lot more leeway when it comes to things like legato, like vibratos and bends and how people display and shape them, because it's very difficult to do an ASCII tab like this. I'm not even really going to worry about timing. Some people will put like S and E for 16th and 8th notes and quarter notes. That's a bit excessive. I think as long as the notes are correct, I'm willing to be a lot more forgiving on tiny things that are missing, like vibratos on bends and slides and so on. Just because the exercise of doing these tabs is very difficult. So let's kick it from the top. So off the bat, I noticed that this tabber has not put in vibratos at all. Again, I don't think that that's worth, criticizing or taking points off. They are also being more conservative with hammer-ons and pull-offs, this is exactly how I would play this too. So this is pretty great so far. Let's get to the next line. Bend up on 8, correct. This is the first major mistake. I see this played a lot. Again, I think it's very obvious that this is a slide that you're playing, right? Unless you're doing an instantaneous bend here, even then that's wrong because you're in the wrong position. You'll be playing this, and then you need to do, right? Whereas if you play it my way, it automatically slides you into the correct position. So yeah, again, interestingly enough, like the first major mistake of this tab is another mistake on this tab. Same exact section. It's one that's highly disputed, and I think both tabs are wrong here. But the rest is okay, so I'm gonna just move on from here. But again, I'm gonna keep this in mind as probably the first place I'm gonna subtract a point on this tab. So let's scroll down. All the notes are correct here. I think it's interesting that this tabber put a hammer on here, but not here. Or sorry, pull off. I would pull both these notes off. It's always interesting the decisions as to like, why would you tab like a hammer on or pull off in one section and not in the other? This is one of the hardest legatos to hear because the transition is still like the same as if you were to pick the notes. I just find it interesting. Again, it's not something that I care to like subtract points about. Here we have one somewhat of an awkward transition. I liked how the songster tab handled this by playing the 5s and then dropping down to an open string. That's how I like to do it. Here you have to do a string hop. And then your index finger is down again, and now you have to string hop again. So I think the open string solves all of these problems. So let me scroll down and reveal the next section. Here you go. I'm loving this. 8, slide up to 12. And even bonus points for doing the shift slide here. It's, you know, this is a shift slide. This is actually a legato slide. But to have this as a shift slide is pretty great because it's commonly missed. Some people slide straight up to 14, but no, you gotta play that 12. But you can see how efficient this is. You know, you end up, mainly the one thing as to why people find like excuses to play this section differently is that you can get away with not using your pinky. And, you know, Jimmy Page was definitely a pinky guy. He was a master guitarist, and he was capable and fully incorporated it into his compositions. And you can see how much more efficient it is if you're willing to strengthen and train your pinky to the point that it's as good as all your other fingers. All right. So here you go. This is the 13. This was missing from the songster tab. I didn't really want to make this a compare to tabs, but just for the sake of efficiency, it helps for me to go back and forth between these first two because they are the two most famous and they are two really good tabs. So it's nice to compare. I'm not going to jump as much back and forth between the remaining tabs. In fact, I'm going to try not to at all. But for the demonstration of this initial couple of runs, I do want to use this. Again, here, double 13 was not tabbed in Songster, whereas it is tabbed here. So far this tab is doing a great job. Wonderful. And then the repetitive. I really don't need to play the section. I'm gonna start to ignore it. But here we go. Timings are not written down here, as I said before, so I can't judge whether or not this is the correct, 16th. Again, I'm not gonna care because these text-based tabs are very difficult to do. I commend anyone willing to sit down and write a text-based tab. So let's just... Now here is a problem. This I do not think is correct. The songster tab I do believe correctly tabbed the section as. And the reason I may have explained before is that you have a sequence, right? Right? Whereas if I'm playing this, the sequence is. The proper sequence, the only thing that makes sense to play in this section is. I understand why the tabber would make this mistake because I do see a lot of tabs playing this section like so. And it's because while these notes are hitting, John Bonham is giving his hardest drum fill. So when you have the drums going ham in the background, it's hard to tell what exactly Jimmy Page is playing, but there is an isolated version of the solo, and I studied that very extensively, and it was pretty obvious to me that this section was. So the slide guitar parts, they put them in here, which a lot of tabbers will do. You're not gonna, it's annoying to split up the section into like guitar 1, guitar 2, because it kind of breaks up the flow of reading the tab. So I understand why they put them here. They probably could have just ignored it. Now, next section. Okay, the bends. So you just heard the effect of my Floyd Rose. When I bend a note, it flattens the other string. So I'm going to try and compensate for that, but if it sounds awkward, it's because I have a Floyd Rose. So I like that this solo does tie in at least these two notes. I think this is a holdover. I wouldn't play what they've tabbed here, which is. I wouldn't play the two notes together. That's what you're seeing. This should have been a parentheses around this note. And I think that this note should be tied in too. So there should be a parentheses here. You should have 3 notes held. And I do not believe that this 20 is played twice. I think that that's awkward. So this is a pretty strange section. Considering how flawless the beginning of the solo is, it is unfortunate that it begins to fall apart a little bit near the end. But this part is hard to hear. Again, there's a lot of action because Bonham picks up so much. And, things, plus you have this note, like this. And again, I should actually find my slide because that's actually how this is played. It's on a clean tone with a slide. But you have this carrying into the next measure, and it does cause everything to be a little bit more muddy. So it is understandable why you begin to see mistakes in this section. So let's just go ahead and move on to the 14s. Hold on. Again, I'm doing the thing where I'm just playing the solo the way that I want to play it and not actually reading the tab. When you see me reading the tab is when I slow down and like have no idea what I'm doing. So I do like the bend here. I don't like the extra 12. I think that that's all you have. But I do appreciate that this writes it as a bend. I don't know why there's 2. But it falls in line with what I see a lot of tabs do is where they have the slide, right? Or the hammer-on. I think a lot of people are hearing a 12 that's not actually there. Let's see how this closes out. Hold on. I think I'm playing it wrong. I don't think there's a problem with the tab. I'm just unfamiliar. The position of this is slightly different, and it's slightly better compared to... But I'm actually going to have to work this out and play it my way to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. Basically, the issue that's causing me to have trouble is this bend release here. So what you're supposed to play is a bend up. But instead, the tabber, instead of tabbing out the release from 14, they decided to tab this as a bend, which is kind of confusing me. So if I ignore this and I just play it like this songster tab where it's just one note at a time, I do see that the notes are correct. There's no mistakes here. It's just that this bend makes it very awkward. And again, like in terms of positions, if you shift this bend down to here, it's actually efficient. It's only that I prefer to play this bend with my middle finger. So if you have trouble, playing this way where you're alternating the pinky and the ring, I think it's very acceptable to actually do what was done in this tab, which is to play this bend with your pinky or your middle. And I think that this is much preferable to what we see on the songster tab. So actually, I think this is fine. And then to close it out, let's see what we got. And again, no issues down here. So some disagreements between this tab and the songster tab, actually quite a few disagreements, and also some disagreements between this tab and how I like to play Stairway to Heaven. So let's go and do the scoring again. First off, I don't like this again, so that's my first point. I don't believe that I had any issues here. I think that this is awkward, but it is the correct note, right? A fretted 5 on D is the same as an open on G. So, it would be like half a point, but I don't want to keep track of half points, so I'll let it slide. This, I love this. This is great. I love this. This is great. And really the first issue, is the one that I spent, again, the most time on here. I think that this is incorrect, and so I think that this should be a 15, basically, right here. That's what I'm saying needs to be played. And, that's a point. That is a big point. So maybe this is a point and a half. I don't know. I think I'm gonna be gentle. I'm just gonna take 1 point off for this. This is a little bit awkward. I think that this is incorrect, but I also think that this is double note is incorrect, right? So I'll just count this as 1 point. I think that this was okay. This was fine, but this is an extra note that doesn't need to be there, so that's another point. And again, this section would be fine if this wasn't there. This is an awkward, it's not what's being played. You're bending up to 14, and then you're releasing the 14 down to 10. So that's another point there. And that's going to be it for the solo. So that's 5 points off. That's 95. That's 3 points more than this. This, I think, a lot of jurisdictions. This is an A-. This could slide as a solid A. I don't remember what I scored my own tab. I think it was a 96. So at least I'm barely scraping by. But again, my opinion of this tab is that it's phenomenal. This is a wonderful tab. I don't have that many bad things to say about it. Again, the only mistakes are minor. Yes, there are some notes that I think are completely out of place, but it's not anything that is like destroys the solo. Sure, this may, I think this is probably the only thing that I would put the most consideration towards as in being like a real mistake, is that this 15 is on the wrong string. Everything else, like double notes here, people just hear a phantom note, they'll maybe pick twice, I don't know. It's not gonna ruin your Stairway solo, it's gonna pass, it's gonna be close enough. So far, we're looking at pretty good tabs. Now, let's move on. As I go to the top, there are multiple versions of the Stairway tab, so I'm just gonna go to the next one here. And yeah, let's see what we've got. Let's see if there's a solo. I don't remember the differences between all these tabs, but at least since they're all on the same website, I know they're not copies of the same one. The solo that I just showed, that's the one that's the most just stolen and placed onto other tab websites. So let's find our guitar solo. This looks like the bridge. Here we go. All right, so let's see what we got. So this person actually took the time to denote vibratos and the timings of every note, which is actually really goddamn impressive. It's a lot of work to do that. I would never, ever consider tabbing out something to the degree of this accuracy here. So let's see what we've got. So, obviously there is something wrong, but there's actually nothing wrong. There's some awkward things that I wouldn't play correctly, but that doesn't apply to this tab at all, because this is the live version, I believe, from The Song Remains the Same. And I should have known that by the fact that there was actually like an intro going into the solo, right? This thing right here. Oh, whatever. I don't know how to play it. I never liked the live version of the guitar solo. I think it's too long, and it basically just kind of draws out and kind of just noodles around aimlessly for a lot of the solo. I don't know how to play it, but this is not a version of the tab that I'm going to be talking about, because I'm not talking about the live version of Stairway. However, one thing that I do want to mention is a lot of mistakes in Stairway tabs are actually propagated from the live solo. In fact, right here, I played this. Like, a lot of people do that. And they play this note. This is one of the most incorrectly played notes, and I've gone through this multiple times in all of my previous videos. The correct note is an F. And the best tabs will have it properly denoted as an F, but when Jimmy Page plays the solo live, I believe that this tab is actually very accurate to the live performance of from The Song Remains the Same. But these issues propagate into the studio version, which is something that is worth highlighting. So like, if you're hearing the way that I play the solo and you're looking at these tabs and thinking like, you know, there's some like mistakes and, you know, some of these things aren't being played correctly, probably the biggest culprit is that people confuse the live solo with the studio solo. In fact, some people probably, I'm sorry for going back and forth so much. Also, I hate this stupid little ad. A lot of people probably learn this solo, like they probably click through these tabs and they learn this not knowing that it's the live version, and they think that it is the studio version. And maybe that's how they mistakenly propagate some of these issues. But you know, very quickly you'll realize there's parts in this solo that aren't anywhere close to what's on the studio recording, and of course the fact that the solo is way too long. But that is an issue. Let's wait for the motorcycle to go away. All right, so this is the next tab I want to go through. Here we have solo, but it doesn't start with the bend. It starts with this part, which is like the end of the bridge. I forgot how to play it. Anyway, the end of the bridge is not part of the solo. It is actually played by the rhythm guitar. So we're actually gonna start here. Bend and vibrato, impressive. I really like that. They didn't put the time marks, which again, I don't know why anyone would. That live version solo is actually really impressive. So let's start with this one. So again, this tabber has decided, much like the Songster one, to basically hammer on and pull off everything. That's fine. I like this. I like the vibratos, and I think that all the notes are correct. So let's see how this next part goes. So, first mistake. Again, this 5 slide up. 3 tabs we've gone through, and 3 tabs have not done this correctly. Let's see what it's supposed to be. So really, this 5 should be up here. That's all that is, and this tab would have gotten the section correct. But again, this is for some reason a very hard section for people, and this just is what it is. We'll see if there's a single tab I review today that gets this right. The rest is fine though. 10 is correct. So let's go to the next part. So the notes are all correct here. I like this, but this is awkward. There is no hammer-on pull-off there. It's just the same descending run from here. Now let's see what we've got. again, the reason why I dislike this section being played in 5th position, so let me give you something that you haven't seen before. A lot of times, this section is played with a slide down to 3 instead of playing the 8. So, and then we slide back up. This tabber has chosen to do something even more awkward. So we're playing the 8 here, and now you have to slide it from 5. Now normally I would do this slide like this, but now I'm completely out of position to play the rest, right? So then I have to do this. And then it gets even more awkward because now we have to slide all the way up to 14. And the issue with this is that we're missing the shift slide, the very obvious shift slide, right? So once again, if you look at how this section is tabbed out, it is again just the refusal to use the pinky. I can do everything with my ring finger and my index, which for most novices are your 2 strongest fingers because you do your pentatonic scales with them. But compare that to, like, basically by making these notes, which are easy to play, easy, you're making the transitions hard. If you add your pinky, sure, these notes become a little bit harder to play until you strengthen your pinky and dexterity to the point that they're no longer hard to play. All of a sudden, you don't have these insanely difficult transitions where you're jumping up and down the fretboard. But you know, there's a point where it's not effective for me to keep harping on the same point over and over again. But as we go from tab to tab and see how each tab decides to display the section differently each time, it just really goes to highlight the point. Again, there's only one most logical way to play this section, which was in the previous tab, the slide up. Anyway, let's move on. Where are we? So that's good, the double 13. Double 13's often missed. I actually like how this was tabbed. It has you playing everything. A lot of people like to do this as a hammer-on pull-off. So this is pretty excellent. Again, the repetitive section, we're going to skip that. Here we go. I really like this. So again, this tab agrees with the songster tab and it disagrees with the previous tab. So I like this, right, as opposed to, why won't this ad get out of the way? Anyway, I really like this. So what this is showing is a 15 that you bend up and that you hold the bend, HB, hold bend to this ghost note 15, which you then release to the 13. Oh, which then you release and pull off to the 13. Hold on. So that is correct. This is the cleanest and the best way to display the section. And actually, overall, I'm really enjoying how this tabber writes out the nuances with the notes. They really spell it out. How you should bend, you know, they have the ghost notes, you're holding things properly, they have all the vibratos, they have all the slides, and I think they've put a lot more effort into doing this as opposed to that first tab. So actually, as much as I criticized this section, and just only this section, oh yeah, and this note, I actually think that this tab is even better than the previous one that I went over. I really like what I'm seeing, despite of all the despite of the critique, of course. I'm critiquing because I want this to be better, not because I think it's bad. So, next section. So I just went on this giant spiel and diatribe about how I loved that the nuances were tabbed out, and they did not do the tie-in between these 3 notes, right? These 3 notes should be held, and that is actually missing from here. So, but everywhere else, they've done a great job. So it doesn't take away the fact. But this line is perfect. So there's no issues here. So again, another place where they're asking for a slide. I've seen hammer-ons. Should be a bend. Okay, this is So this is pretty much identical to the songster here. And I'm just gonna finish it off. Anyway, now I'm starting to suspect that this is the same tab as the songster tab, just on an ASCII instead of in reality. It's probably not, because some of these mistakes are different, right? So like this section, the songster is actually correct, it's missing the slide. No, this tab is different. So the note is here instead of here. But let me just look at this. I think that this is identical. No, okay, you're right. So the songster stays in like the 8th position, whereas this has a weird slide up. So it's not the same tab that's just been stolen. There are some minor fixes to it, but they are quite similar tabs. So let me go through it and let me score this again. We're gonna ignore the fact that this is not part of the lead guitar. And mistake number 1 here, but this is the same mistake that the other 2 tabs have made, so whatever. They're all basically at the same score on the same point. As we go to this next section, I thought that everything here was great, and then this is just a mess. Notes are tabulated correctly, so as much as I do want to take points off for this, I don't think I can, but this is really awkward and really bad. So I'm gonna go, sorry, that was off the screen. If it was off the screen, I'm not sure. It's hard to keep track of 2 things at once. But this is not correct, so I'm gonna take a point. I really want this to be more than 1 point, but so far I've really only been taking max single point deductions for single errors. So I'm gonna try and be consistent with myself. I mean, there can be 2 points taken off because this is an awkward transition, and this should be a shift slide from 12 to 14. So maybe I will. So let's call this a 2-point deduction. Again, I'm just making up on the fly. The points don't actually matter. My overall opinion at the very end is what matters. So let's go. I think that this was good. In fact, I really liked, again, how this was notated. I thought it was done pretty excellently. This I thought was correct, right? So this is great. And this is missing the tie-ins. Because the author of this tab decided to put everything there, I think they intended for all these minor intricacies to be correct. So the fact that this is missing here, I'll call that another point off. And here we go. This, again, is kind of awkward. So I'll call it a point, and this was also awkward. As I explained before with the songster tab, so I'll call it a... You know, because of that, there's a lot of point deductions at the very end, and I'm being pretty harsh on this. So how about I combine this and this into one mistake, and I'll just call that a single point. So I'm gonna give this a 95. I already forgot what I gave to the previous tab. I think I also gave that one a 95, because I think I gave my own performance of the solo a 96. So with that said, this tab, I'm giving it the same score as this tab right here. And in all honesty, I actually like this tab much better. I don't know how it has a different score. At the end of the day, I think that the notes that this tab is asking you to play are more correct. The only note that is really wrong is this one, whereas the other tab has a pretty big mistake, like right here. It's hard to really pick one over the other, because if I were to take both of these tabs, as well as, you know, some things from the songster, and combine all 3 together, you get a very solid and pretty much perfect Stairway to Heaven tab. The only thing that I personally disagree with between all 3 of these tabs combined is this section at the end, right here. So, so far, all 3 of these tabs, I would say that they're about the same. I wouldn't really, I don't think any of them are perfect. I don't think any of them are bad. I would totally recommend them all as good resources. Of course, this is all saying, you know, on top that I've created a tab myself, but my tab is much less accessible. I have a Guitar Pro tab, so you need some version of Guitar Pro, probably version 5 at least, which is the tab that I created it in. I can't provide a tab in any other format, because the purpose of my tab is to contain the drums and the bass and the keyboard. So, and you just can't do that. I mean, you can do it on Songster, but I think Songster is not as good as Guitar Pro. So like, if you want my tab, you have to watch my really awkward YouTube video playthrough of the tab, where the screen share is kind of fuzzy and the resolution kind of breaks down, and you have to like, you don't have the same freedom and accessibility that you have on these tabs. So it's almost better, instead of like using my tab, if you don't have Guitar Pro, it's almost better to watch this video and to just like use these tabs with me pointing out what I think are the errors if you want to learn the song. And so far, I think all three of these are solid. If you look at all three of these tabs and learn them all together, and most importantly, once you think you learn the song, you cross-reference what you're playing to the studio recording, you're gonna have a pretty good performance of Stairway to Heaven. That's gonna start to break down soon. I've shown you the best. Intentionally, I wanted to start off with the good tabs. Things will start to fall apart. So let's go on. Let's move to tab number 4. So this one's, I think this one's pretty funny. I'm gonna explain why, but this is the official version of Stairway to Heaven. I got it from Guitar One magazine and typed it out here. Let's see how official this version of the tab is. All right. Here we go. We have the solo here, and right off the bat, where is the 7? Where is the bend? It's not in the previous section. So the very first note of Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo, the most famous note of all time, is missing from this tab. So we are not off to a good start. That deserves like a 10-point deduction alone. I mean, that's like basically a 0 on a test. If I were a real teacher and you submitted this tab to me, I would pretty much fail you out of the class. Apparently that note does not exist. Jimmy Page never played it. They did not tab any legato elements whatsoever. And as we'll see, not even any bends. I mean, the notes are correct here, but let's look at this. Sorry, I missed the 2 10s. All right, so how's this part supposed to sound? And what do I have? Sorry. Jesus. It's missing like 4 notes, and of course all the legato is wrong. That's why I'm having trouble playing it, but I'm not going to edit out any of these mistakes, because the mistakes are part of the experience. Let's just go on. At least they tabbed the bend here. Hey, that's something, right? Pretty good, except this part's a little bit messed up. It should be. So it's missing a 5. Actually, really, I think just these 5s need to be up here. So they're on the wrong string. You'll see a lot of wrong string transcriptions as we go through. It's missing before it slides. So again, it's missing a lot of notes in the sequence. And again, super awkward transition going from 8 up to 12. But we've seen that in better tabs than this. So you know what? It's not something we can ding for this. They missed the bend down, but you know what? They got the 2 13s. I think a lot of these mistakes is that this tabber is just not very experienced with tab notation. A lot of these missing notes are incorrectly tabbed bends and bend releases. So these components aren't being incorporated into the tab itself, but they're taking the notes from the tab, and then on occasion they're just putting the notes on the wrong string. So this really isn't the worst tab of all time. There's just a lot of errors. Let's see how this part goes. Here we do. So they did this section, right? Probably because anyone with a guitar and ears knows how to play this part. So they were able to correctly identify, you know, the bend release to 15. But again, this is not how you really should tab this. You should tab this with a BR, standing for bend release. But let's see how we're doing. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line. All right, so again, it's the same thing. Like, this is supposed to be. This is one bend on 15 that's not notated correctly, followed by. And again, the bend here is misplaced. It should be on this note. I don't know why I'm giving this tab the time of day. I'm actually taking this seriously. It's a joke. This is not a good tab at all. It's a disaster. But we're almost there, so let's just keep trucking. Again, missing bends all the way through. The rest of this line is gone. All right, and then this one. This is my favorite. It's on the wrong string. And then what do you have? So actually, surprisingly, the most accurate thing in this entire tab is this section, which every other tab has played very awkwardly. So there's a correct way to play this tab. Again, instead of the 10s, all the other tabs we've seen have done weird stuff like to avoid using the pinky, and this tab has actually resolved it the most natural way to not use the pinky, which is to bend on 6 down here. The problem is bending on 6, the farther you are from the middle of the fretboard, the harder it is to do a bend. So like doing 2 whole steps from 6, you might break your string or you're going to detune your guitar, which for me is a Floyd Rose. This is going to be a pain in the ass if I detune the guitar, which is why I didn't try it there. But bending actually on the 6 resolves the issues that the other tabs have, where you're playing this like awkward transition. And in this case, if you do bend on the 6, then you don't have to use your pinky. The last note is missing, I just realized. Down to the 7. Anyway, let's do the end. How's the last lick? Hey, they didn't mess up the last lick. So this tab is not good. It is transcribed from someone who's not very experienced in tabbing. They took a magazine that may have had a somewhat accurate tab. For the most part, I don't have complaints about the notes, but I can't tell what notes are right and what's wrong because the author of this tab made so many transcription errors. And my favorite thing about this tab, because I've seen this before when I was researching for my own tab, is, let's see these comments. Most versions are pretty much the same, only what's better is chord shapes. This one does not. That is not even close to the criticism of this. The chord shapes is not the problem whatsoever. There's something dodgy about the beginning of the solo. Yeah, it's missing the first note, made by the anus. And, oh, okay, this is my favorite comment. Man must have got bored typing all that out. That is my favorite thing. Probably exactly what happened because there are so many mistakes in this tab that I just find it hilarious, and that's why I wanted to go through it. But there's a cautionary tale, right? Because someone might somehow end up looking at this tab and actually playing this shit, thinking that they're playing Stairway to Heaven. That is the problem. This really highlights the core of why I want to make this video, like why I'm criticizing tabs. In fact, I'm going to scroll down to another comment right here. What's wrong? You don't know how to play by ear. You're supposed to submit songs how you interpret them, not how a magazine does. I think they're trying to, I guess they're complaining about the author, but this is a criticism that I see people throw at people that criticize tabs. Someone watching this is probably thinking, you know, why are you here making fun of these tabs? You're just trying to show off about how your tab is so great. That's not the point at all. The point is that people come in here and they look at these tabs expecting accuracy. They expect the truth. And when you see that something that's not the truth, most of us, people that are experienced, that are learning the song, are just gonna, like me, they're just gonna laugh it off. They're gonna see the obvious mistakes and discard this tab. Someone that is not experienced at all. Imagine someone who becomes a fan of Led Zeppelin, loves the song Stairway to Heaven, and decides to pick up the guitar. And this is the first song that they want to learn, starting from the beginning all the way through the guitar solo. I know when I was young, my ear was not anywhere near the point where I could tell. I mean, obviously, I still think that I would be able to tell something was wrong with this tab. But someone might actually go, say a tab that wasn't as bad as this, where it was kind of like this Songster tab, but you know, on every single line, there's like one mistake. You're playing the wrong thing. Classic mistake is here at the end, right? For those pentatonic slaves, I call them pentatonic slaves because they only play the pentatonic scale. And they don't know how to play anything that's not pentatonic scale. Right? So the reason this tab is important to this video is it's a symptom of the worst things that you could get in a tab. Something that's just blatantly wrong. Then it's basically the worst case example, but in reality, you have examples like this, where it's a very good tab, but it's not perfect. Every single tab that I've shown besides this one are very good tabs, but they're not perfect. And if you go into these thinking you're gonna get the gospel, at the end of the day, you could be getting transcription errors. Maybe the tabber on this tab meant to put this note up here, but they accidentally typed it in the wrong slot and they just didn't notice this. I know because after I released my video of my Guitar Pro tab, the playthrough, I found mistakes in that tab after the fact. Not on the guitars. The mistakes were in the keyboards, but nonetheless, they were pretty big errors, but I had already published my tab. So what that means is the version of the tab on my channel that exists right now is not the most accurate Stairway to Heaven guitar tab. In fact, I renamed that video to reflect that it is the second most accurate. Once I'm done with all these videos, when I'm done talking about everything, drums, bass, keyboards, so on, I'm gonna do a final wrap-up video that does show what I believe to be is the most accurate Stairway to Heaven tab ever created. If you want to see the tab in its current form, which is already final, I do think that all the mistakes have been fixed, and you have Guitar Pro, you can still go through the link and download the tab. It is corrected, but the video is still wrong. I intend to take that video down once the final video is released. But back on subject, these things make it through. It's hard to vet out every single mistake in a tab. I mean, it's just a mess of notes, and I could go through this really, if say I tabbed this and I went through it really quick, I probably might not notice something like this. So that's where these errors propagate. It's not even that the tabbers don't know how to play the solo. Like, this guy here probably mistranscribed this because everybody, pretty much everybody hears. That's what you got on Songster, that's what you got on the other tab, and I think that's what you got on the really fucked up tab too. Yeah, you did. And what happened here? This is the most popular Stairway to Heaven guitar tab. The vast majority of people are gonna see this, and you have a lot of people playing this section. And all this could have been was a typo. All this could have been was the same mistake that littered this tab, that makes this tab a disaster. Only it happened once or twice on this tab, on this tab, on this tab. And if you just use any one of these resources to learn the song, and then you don't take the knowledge in your head and cross-reference the original track to figure out what the errors are, you're gonna spend the rest of your life thinking that you know how to play Stairway to Heaven to the dot, note for note, regardless of whether it's this version, this version, this version, or even my version. But you're never going to actually get it unless you do the work yourself. So with that said, I don't believe the last version on Ultimate Guitar actually has a solo. So that's gonna spare us. We can move on. This is gonna be a very long video, but you know, this is a very important subject, so all this stuff matters. Let's go into another tab. This is a PDF that I found, and I actually think this one's really neat. I like it because it's different from all the other tabs. It's kind of like half Guitar Pro, half like transcribed. It was made in some kind of software. Sorry if I make any, there's gonna be some issues in displaying. I'm gonna try my best to make sure that all of the lines are shown as I'm playing this. That is not correct. The time signature for this is like 98. So mistake there, but I think that was not something that was intended by the author. Let's see what we got. First note here, 7 bend up, no vibrato on it. It's possible that this is just limited, again, that you can't put a vibrato on a bend. We'll see it down the road, but let's play this. So they've decided to hammer on and pull off everything again. Again, fine. What do you have next? Once again, so that's like 5, this is what, tab number 5, and that's 5 tabs that have messed up this one section over and over and over again. So of course, this is supposed to be, again, obviously this is not correct, so not much stuff to say. All right. Next line. Once again, it's just interesting what people choose to hammer on and pull off and what they don't. Like, why is this not a hammer on? I think this is one of those situations where they would have written a pull off, but it's going between lines, so maybe the software can't do a pull off over lines. But this part actually looks good. I like it. And since I can only show one line at a time because I'm blocking the way, this is the open note. This is odd. There's 2 8s. There's only 1 8. So that's an extra note. And this is supposed to be an 8th note. And again, we have this. So this is an ending that makes more sense than one of the previous tabs that had you like slide up to 14. But again, the reason I don't like the way that this is played is simply because even from this position, 8 sliding up to 15, they did do the double 13s, so I like that. But it's just an awkward slide, right? Maybe you could do this, but at some point you gotta jump up. But I do like this line. I think this is great. This part doesn't need to be played. Oh, let's look at this. What do we have? Okay, the lines don't line up. There's like a weird space here before this 15, but this is correct. Yeah, everything's kind of like off shifted, but this is the 16th note going into the dotted 8th note for the 15th. So at least this transition is correct. No vibrato on the bend. I don't think they can put vibratos on the bend or else they would have done the first note. So what do we have here? Okay, so this tabber has decided to take the ambiguity between and decided to just include both ways. Now 15 means you like hold the note, but like you don't. Ghost notes are weird. Like people mean a lot of different things about it. The way that they've notated ghost notes, they're basically saying you hold this note from before, but there's no 15 from before to hold. So I don't know if this is just them saying, hey, I don't know what fucking note's being played here, so I'm just gonna play them both. All right. Are they doing ties? Because if they do ties, then that's something that I would want to judge. Ties. Okay, so they're not. So I don't know if they can tie this, but again, this is a place where it would be appropriate to just make all these ghost notes, right? So. All right, and now again, bending on the second string. Again, this should be a bend up to that note. Like we've seen this played like 5 different ways now, just like before. So you've seen the bend, we've seen the slide, we've seen the hammer-on, we've seen none of the above. They probably meant to do a hammer-on. Again, as we've seen before, they don't have the ability to display hammer-ons between lines, supposedly. So I guess that's what this is supposed to be, but it's in an awkward position. Again, we're not at the center of the fretboard, so it's hard to do a 1.5 bend, whereas if you're on 14, like all the other tabs, it's a lot easier. And now what do we have here? 9, 2.5. This is bold because all the other tabs tell you to go from 10 to bend up to 2. And in fact, not only that, when I first made my tab, I thought it was a 1/2 bend from 11. I had something like that. The reason I tabbed it like that is because in reality, when Jimmy Page plays this bend, he actually starts bending before he plays it. So it is definitely not a bend up from 9. It is a bend up from 10 that's already on its way to 11 as it's being picked. So, but this tabber has chosen to do the bend up from 9. And they've added an extra note here, this tritone, which is, it's not there. Now, if this was a 10, and this was a 10, and this was a 9, it would be the same exact tab as, I believe, the songster. So, you know, it is what it is. Good to see that everybody has still nailed the ending. So my opinion on this, well, let's go and rate it again. So I like this. I don't like this. So again, same exact, I mean, everybody's gotten the beginning right except for that really bad tab which doesn't have the bend. Everybody's gotten it right except for this point. They've all gotten this part wrong. Next up, I think that this is all fine. This double note is pretty wrong. This transition here from 8 to 15, again, I think this is an awkward position to play this. I would not recommend anybody do this. Yada yada, all the stuff about the pinky. I'm done talking about that. This part is fine. This part is excellent. Love it. This, I mean, you can't go both ways. You're either right or you're wrong. And if you're putting in a 15 ghost note that doesn't even follow from any previous section, you're just like throwing in like a random ghost note, you gotta take that out. You know, you gotta be confident in what you're telling people to play. It's either one way or the other. I think this is fine. This is fine. I mean, they could have put the ghost notes, that'd be great. This is fine, this is not fine. This should be a bend 8 to 10, you know, if you're gonna play in this position, which I think is awkward. And then lastly, this is not fine. So that's another point. So this tab gets a 94. So it's 1 point less than the 2 Guitar Pro tabs that I love. But actually, I will say I really like the notation. I think that this is really clean. It's a very beautiful tab. I like it way more than this, to be honest, in the songster. I just think that it's, I don't know, maybe I'm used to Guitar Pro, and Guitar Pro shows you tablature and musical notation, so maybe that's why I like this, but I just think that it's a very beautiful tab. And there are some things that it does that are better than the other tabs. I mean, I don't know about that, but like, again, now we have four really good tabs. I mean, this one got like what, 92 or 93, 295 and 94. These are all solid tabs. So you got 4 great tabs that you can use as a resource. No major complaints compared to what I've seen on the tab that actually was really bad. Again, things are not always going to be, I'm not just here to make tiny little criticisms. I guess I've gone on a giant diatribe about this tab already, so I've done the work. Really, I can take it easy. This is a very long video. It's probably over an hour. I haven't really checked, but by the time it's all edited down, it's probably going to be an hour because I like to ramble so much. But, you know, this was always going to be a loose video. It's me just with my guitar looking at tabs. Let's go to this. There are more sites than this. Like, there's Guitar E tab or whatever. All they've done was copy these tabs. All they've done was rip off whatever's on Ultimate Guitar. So these 2 tabs that I have left to show are the only 2 unique tabs that I was able to find. Let me drag myself to the other side of the screen, and then I can actually maybe make myself bigger. Sorry, I don't do this a lot, so this is kind of an experimental video here. maybe this is the start to my streaming career. But let me get that up. This solo is interesting because it's completely different from the other solos. It is completely different and completely unique, which I guess is something that you can, you know, you gotta say, you at least have to give that to the author. They like went and made their own tab, not using any of the other tabs. So we'll see what we get. So what we have here is a pentatonic slave. I mean, there's no world, anyone with ears knows that that's not the right note. That's the note we're supposed to end on. So this person, they notate the bend, they don't notate the pull-offs. This looks kind of familiar. Interestingly, they messed up this note with the pentatonic scale, which most people don't mess up, even the people that are pentatonic slaves. Usually they mess up this note. But this tabber has got it right. They did not tab any bends here. So you have and of course, not a single person has gotten this right somehow. It's actually a miracle. How nobody can hear that. So we're really just missing a bend here, and this should bend up to the 10. And of course, yeah, that's all fucked up, but you know. This was what this was gonna, this is the kind of critique that this tab was gonna get. Let me just tell you, I did skim through this one before I started this video to make sure it wasn't the same as the other tabs, and I knew there were gonna be problems. Remarkably, that is correct. I mean, they didn't do the open string, but you know, a lot of people haven't done this string. So this is hilarious. This bend must have come from this tab. That was completely missing the bend. I guess somehow the tabber took the bend and put it right here because there's no bend here, right? You know, the line before goes. So this tabber is, basically I think they just copied this and pasted it over and didn't get rid of this bend right here. But that is so funny that the missing bend somehow ended up here. Get over that. Let's do this. This is odd. I think that there's a typo here, like again, a wrong string typo. So this is supposed to go like this. So what happened is this line, these two notes are supposed to be on this string, and then these two notes don't exist. They were somehow doubled. And of course, again, they have pentatonic slaved themselves into not being able to play this 8 and playing a 7 instead. But remarkably, they actually did this part correct. So this is consistent with the version 1 of Ultimate Guitar, the one with the most views. So that's great. All right, so one, this is a bend, this is a release bend, and then this part is just completely fucked up. So this whole section at the end is completely messed up. And then repeat this a couple of times. So of course we're missing a bend. Oh, we're missing a note, actually. We're missing this 13. So do this once. And I think this, so of course we all know this ending goes. And again, I think this is on the wrong string. It's supposed to be on 15, and they're doing a slide. And then slide riff, repeat about 4 times. They got that right, but I guess they forgot to tab the rest of the solo that's played underneath this guitar part, because the last part of the solo is, then do this fast. Which, of course, they're supposed to, you know. Actually, this, I will explain this. When I was a youngster playing guitar, I did not have an electric guitar. My first guitar was a classical nylon string guitar. It only has 20 frets. And I would play this song all the time. The guitar solo, I learned it on a nylon string guitar, believe it or not. And there was no fret to play. There was nothing that you could play on whatever, just on the 21st, right? Whatever that is. Why don't I know this? 20. There's no 20th fret. Whatever it is, if you have a guitar that doesn't have that fret, you're going to play it down here instead. And of course, they just... so, remarkable. I mean, this is the first tab out of 5 to actually mess up this part at the end. And I find it odd that this section is not tabbed up. But I guess the beginning of the song is much easier to tab and play. That is the truth. If you don't know the song and you're trying to work it out, like if you've never listened to Stairway and you're just going to create the tab from scratch, it would be a lot easier to work this all out because it's all pentatonics in the same position. But at the end, the bends get difficult to tab. So what most likely happened was this tabber just gave up, but they should have at least written like, hey, I don't know how to play the rest of this part. But I just find it hilarious that they decided to tab the slide riff and just like pretend, because that does exist, right? It's over 4 measures, and just pretend that the measures of the solo underneath that don't even exist, and that's hilarious. Anyway, this tab is not good. Just like the other one, it gets a 0. God, this bend here is hilarious. So yeah, there's a lot of other versions here, and all of these are just ripped off from Ultimate Guitar, so there's not anything to... But this is Stairway to Heaven easy tab. You know, maybe I should look at all the other stuff. Maybe the other stuff is correct, but this video is dedicated on the guitar solo. This tab is not good at all. It has a lot of the same mistakes that we see on the other tabs, but I've already talked about all that, so let's just wrap it up. Let's look at the last tab. What do we got here? Does this one even have a solo? Yes, it does. Oh, bridge, guitars. Okay, it's an awkward thing to do. Okay, first off the bat, this tab has one big issue in that whoever tabbed this did not put dashes between notes. You should always put dashes between notes because, you know, numbers, you know, I can read, you know, some notes have 2 numbers in them, but thankfully you only go up to like 20s or whatever, so I'll be able to figure it out. It's going to be a little bit of a mess. Somewhat difficult, but I'll try my best. Is my screen in the way? No, it's not, but for aesthetic purposes, I am going to pull this down a little bit and just give you... It'll be a shame if I review this video and for some reason, like, my fucking guitar is completely off the screen or whatever, or I'm blocking the tab, and that'll be a travesty because of all the time I spent on this video. All right, let's just wrap it up. Let's do it. This is a very, very unique way of avoiding the pinky. Most people just play the 8 with the ring finger. And this person decides. But again, very interesting that this tabber is not using the other tabs as a base. This person has decided to tab this from scratch, which, you know, commendable because, as I've said, I'm not brave enough to make a tab without Guitar Pro. So let's just try the rest. This is going to be awkward because this person has tabbed this in a way that I've never dreamed of playing Stairway to Heaven. Very awkward. This note is not correct. I don't believe it's a G. Okay, so this is supposed to be bent. So they've done the same, but they've chosen to do it in a weird position. This is such an awkward thing to do. So this is 7 tabs. 7 out of 7 tabs did not do this transition correctly. God, somebody out there has got to have like actually figured out that you're supposed to play. By this alone, I can claim that I have the most accurate tab as for the guitar solo, because it's so obvious to me, and I've seen 7 tabs play this 7 different ways. That is remarkable, actually. This is so hard to read because everything's squished together, but this is actually correct. It's just that this is wrong. I think they're just intending. Some people play, okay, some people do this. They could do. So maybe they meant to, maybe this is again on the wrong string and that it's supposed to be, but there's no 3. Like regardless whether it's this string or this string, there's no 3. So this is a mistake. I don't know how people are playing this twice because we've seen this for the second time. So again, this is just same exact thing as before. People don't want to use their pinky. They don't want to slide up and make it easier for themselves. So they make it so much harder by playing. Now this person has pentatonic slaved themselves into not playing this C right here, or it's F, sorry, I'm thinking in terms of E minor, in terms of this F right here. They're missing a note too. There should be something like, but basically they're doing this like crawling method to get their hand up the fretboard, which again, just slide up from your pinky. And once you do that, I mean, you can slide up from your ring finger if you want. But so far, I think only 1 tab has, the only tab that's done it is this one. That's the only tab that's actually had it like the most efficient way. So let's go. Hold on, I know that this part is messed up. So, okay, so what I'm supposed to be playing is, and somehow that has become, I don't know what happened, possible that this person's guitar detuned or something, or when they were, you know, bending and they just started playing on the wrong strings that were a half step down or whatever. Because at the very least, that should be a 15, that should be a 13. They're missing a bunch of notes here, but it's not surprising. This is missing repeat bars because they've only tabbed this twice, but it's played like 8 times, but you know. Hold on. I was about to say like, hey, this guy got this part right, but no. Oh shit. Okay, so this is a lot of measures that are, again, not, Jesus. Again, something's wrong with this person's guitar. Maybe they have a B bender and they're like fucking pulling on the string when they're playing those notes. Who knows? All right. One comment about this. It's actually interesting that I haven't seen this mistake more, but when I first learned Stairway to Heaven, let me see if I can find that tab. Okay, I'm back. When I first started learning the Stairway to Heaven, I don't know that all these tabs existed. The tab that I learned was from a site called mikesguitarsite.co.uk, which as you can see is now dead. I wish that solo was still up because for the most part, I thought it was really great. The only thing that I did when I started doing this tab that I always played that I played incorrectly was this section here. I played it as this person tabbed, right? I would play it like this. Because I was too much of a novice to hear that 3 notes were being connected. And one of my motivations for making this video is exactly the section. The thing that invokes the most emotion in me is the fact that I went through like 12, 15 years of my life thinking that I played Stairway to Heaven perfectly, only to find out that there was a glaring error in the tab that I trusted was an authority on the source that sounded good enough to my ear as a kid, a very inexperienced guitar player, only to find out that everything that I knew was wrong. So that's the main reason why I'm doing this. That's why I'm criticizing these tabs. That's why on the good tabs, I'm pointing out these minor mistakes and I'm really harping on them. And then that's why I think it's fun to play through these bad tabs, because the mistakes are so blatant, they kind of point out the examples. You know, it's that thing that people say a lot, the exception that proves the rule. You have these tabs that are great and they have these minor errors, but then these awful tabs just really point out how important those minor errors are and how they can mess people up. I mean, if you don't have the skill to determine what's a good tab or not, and you just, you know, take face value that whatever tab you're using is correct. Again, I hope anybody that looks at this tab in particular knows that what they're playing is wrong. But let's just, again, it's missing a lot of notes, but I think you know what those notes are. We're bending at 11. Okay, so this is, I can tell by that the experience of this tabber is they only know whole step bends. That's why instead of a 1.5 from 10, when they write a bend, the only thing in their mind is a whole step. So they've bent this from 11. And they probably meant to put a bend on this as well. Maybe they were, okay, I see, I'm starting to see what the main issue here is. Putting myself in this person's shoes, they never put any dashes. They confined every measure of their tab to this amount of space. And once they run out of notes, that's it. That's the measure. Move on to the next measure. You can see how in every other tab, the length of the tab varies, which is how tabs are supposed to be, because you get 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes, and so on. I mean, that's just how this thing works. But you know, I guess this tabber was working under the confines of this right here, and it's not enough to put in every single thing that they want. So that explains why this tab is the way it is. So what do we have here? Electric 6-string, we have the slide, right? Oh, they're doing on 13. All right, what the hell is this? Actually, I'm curious as to what this is. Yeah, I disagree. I've listened to this song. There is no 12-string part underneath that. I mean, the only thing that I haven't seen is the... Alright, I'm so lost. What is the... Okay, this is the... Alright. Interestingly, okay, so this 12 carries over to here. It's so confusing. A bend from 8. Okay, again, you're supposed to bend from 6, 2 steps. Right, if you're gonna play it this way, or you can do 1.5 from 7, which is how, again, also how I learned it back in the day when I was young. This person, again, they only know bends as a whole bend, so they're bending from 8. Somehow, like, as they were tabbing this, maybe, like, sometimes they're playing the right, like, notes, but, like, at certain points, they're, like, a half step off. And I don't know if they, like, worked on this in segments, and one day they were just, like, detuned, but Jesus. This is the most confusing of the tabs that I've had to try and play. Better than whatever this was here. So, okay, that's... I really want to know what this is. I have no idea what this is. Okay, whatever. All right, that's it. So, as I decide to keep this running and not edit any further, because this is already a long video and I want to keep it casual, one of the final points I want to make is I've done 7 tabs today. Bad tab, and let me zoom out on this one back to default. And this one is just, it's just hilarious. The guy just got bored halfway through making his tab. But out of 7 tabs, we have 4 great tabs. And between all of them, you have the right way to play Stairway to Heaven, except for this one tiny transition right here. What I want you to do is, if you don't have access to Guitar Pro, and you don't want to watch my YouTube video where I play my tab, it's very awkward. And you don't want to watch this video over and over again to look, as I break down each of these tabs. You can Frankenstein together a perfect Stairway to Heaven tab using these 4 accurate tabs right here. I would start with this one. This is the most popular one on Ultimate Guitar. And you have the intro. This is spot on. All the way to here. I mean, 7 out of 7 tabs that I reviewed got this transition wrong. And so, yeah, you just got to play the slide up. So, and all 4 of these ones, they all have this one wrong. But the rest of the solo here is fine. As it goes through, this is my preferred way of playing this section. So slide up and play all this stuff here. This is correct too. It has the 2 notes here. This whole section is correct. So everything's good up until we reach this point, right? So this is wrong. This 15 should be up here. So I would go to the Songster tab, which has this correctly tabulated as this. And then from here, you can, I think they all have it right here. And this one even tells you to at least hold that note through. So this is all good. This is all good. I prefer this tab. Although, it's nice that you get the staccatos here. So if you really like notation, you can cross-reference the notation from the Songster tab. As well as, the version 3 tab, which I really like the fact that the person went through the time to correctly notate all the minor intricacies on ASCII. But as far as accuracy of the notes, this tab still does it better. They have the bend here. And then this last section, this is awkward. It's a goddamn city. In this section, this tab doesn't exactly, this is very awkward. And the version 3 tab, this is wrong. The version 3 tab is the same as this. So at the end of the day, if you just ignore this, and you just release the 14, then the rest of this section is fine. And all these good tabs got the ending correct. So that's how you do Stairway to Heaven. I hope this video was helpful. It's very long, but we're talking, if you want to master this solo, you got to take the time. You got to study every single note. And, I've shown you a lot of versions of the solos. I've shown you how they've all done it right. I've talked about how they've done it wrong. I've given grades. These 4 solos are the best. Songster, version 1, Ultimate Guitar, version 3, and this strange PDF that I think is a very beautiful tab. So there you have it. My final thoughts on Stairway tabs. In my opinion, no single tab gets everything spot on, but between the 4 tabs that I really praised and exemplified, if you combine them together, the truth is somewhere inside. More than anything, I want this to be a cautionary tale that you should never take anything you see on the internet as the whole truth. Not just tabs, but and not even me. My claim of having the best tab and knowing how to play the solo perfectly are, simply put, claims. I believe them because I know the work I've put into my tabs, but it's up to you to judge. I hope that based on everything I've shown in this video and my other ones on the subject though, that I've given you some useful information on your journey as you try to master the song, especially the guitar solo. And now that I've gotten to talk about the tabs, there's one last video I want to make before I move on from the solo. After that, and what I want to do is I want to talk about the millions and millions of Stairway videos and covers. It's going to be a real good one, probably another real long one. But again, it's going to take all the points that I've made on this video about these tabs and apply them in practice and really highlight the problem of when people trust tabs as being the ground truth without figuring out for themselves what's actually good and what's not.